Proxy principle.
Welcome to the Proxy Principle. I'm Candi Rand. Today's guest has lived about 5 lifetimes in one. Her story begins in Alaska, where she was crowned Miss Teen Talent and won the Miss Hemisphere pageant before opening for some legendary musicians. As a teenager, she was already navigating record label meetings and national television appearances on shows such as Star Search, while confronting the darker realities of the entertainment industry long before the Me Too movement had a name. Her journey took her from Disneyland stages and musical theater to building rock bands in Beverly Hills, from high-profile connections to deeply personal reckonings. In Los Angeles, this woman moved through worlds most people only whisper about, writing her album, The Vanilla Life, exploring BDSM culture during the height of the 50 Shades of Grey era. Then came the unraveling, and an unexpected chapter in professional house cleaning that became a spiritual purification. Today, she is based in Las Vegas, sober, grounded in Buddhism, teaching yoga, singing again, and preparing to release her memoir and podcast, Sing, Spank, Scrub. Her story is raw, fearless, and radically honest. A journey of power, performance, sexuality, survival, and ultimately self-reclamation. Please welcome one of my former bosses, bandmate, and best of all, my friend, Brooke Wilkes. Hey, girlfriend.
Hi, how are you, Candi?
I'm great. I'm glad that you're here today.
Me too.
I'm excited about all of the topics we shall be discussing.
Yes.
But your journey has been quite colorful.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? I wanted to tell you something. I'm glad you said that. You gave me a really nice compliment years ago when we were down in the dungeon underneath Disneyland. Not the dungeon, but the dungeon, our dressing room underground. And you
Yes.
turned to me and you said, Brooke, you're the most non-judgmental person I know. And I don't know what we were talking about to make you say that, but I feel the same way about you. I've told you a lot of my crazy stories, and you've always just been like, oh, tell me more. You've never been like, lose the phone number. You know what I mean? You've always been really
No.
great about it. But I will always remember that you said that to me, and that meant a lot. So thank you.
Well, good. Well,
Yeah.
if people were looking at my social media platforms, they'd probably think I was very judgmental. It's more about, I like to poke the bear and I love to debate. But I
Right?
think when it comes to one-on-one, I'm extremely interested in people that I do have things in common with, but who have had a very different life than I have. And I think that's what makes the world go round. And why should we judge anybody for experiencing what they've experienced, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, but that's you. I mean, we both have met and worked with a lot of people who may not feel the same way, but to me, it's all lessons. It's all a journey. The more colorful, as you put it, things that I've done or do, the more rounded I am and the more I understand other people, you know?
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah,
Well, let's get started on what your life has been about. Now, you were born in Alaska.
I
Is
was
that correct?
Anchorage,
Okay.
Alaska.
And what was your life like there growing up? And
I lived in Alaska till I was, I think, 12 or 13, right before I started high school. And my life back then was very calm, very serene. I lived in a beautiful place, but I didn't know how beautiful it was. I was inside playing with Barbies instead of walking around in nature. And, I went to dance class. I did singing lessons. I went to school, and then my mom realized I could sing when I was quite young, and she started doing things like she put me in a pageant, a talent pageant, and put me in dance class, and got me in musicals, all before the age of I was about 11. Um, Opened for the visiting celebrities because Anchorage had just built this big new sports arena. It was called the Sullivan Arena, and so I was getting to be the opening act for visiting celebrities like the Pointer Sisters and Doc Severinsen, and I knew who the Pointer Sisters were because I'd seen the video Jump, the music
Mhm.
video,
Yeah.
where they're dancing in a black bathroom. It's like all, black tile. Didn't know who Doc was, but it was I just kind of accepted that part of my childhood. It just seemed normal, you know? I didn't
Right.
think it was strange that I was singing in nightclubs with a band of guys who seemed 100, but they were probably, 25 or something.
So, it was it more your mother then that, recognized the talent, or did you, like, have dreams of becoming a singer or entertainer or anything like that? Or was it that she just recognized, "Oh, let me push her in this direction?"
Now I'm thinking, because 'cause I'm like, was it me? Was it her? It was a combo because I was apparently singing before I could talk, and then I was practicing with a spoon on the fireplace, and she would, like, spy on me with her best friend and watch me through the fireplace because it was like a two-sided fireplace, and, I just wanted to keep it to myself. I used to direct my sisters and cousins in shows in our living room, and I would charge everybody $1, so that was, like, the future of what you and I would do together decades
I
later when I'd be like, "Be in my band, let's do this show band and dance around." That was what I was doing with my fellow children. But I was more interested in being the director
Mhm.
than I was in being the star because that was too much. That was
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was. I was very serious then, not fun like we are now, Candy. But yeah, I think my mom knew, and she kind of pushed, and then I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I took on the identity of being special, being the singer. But it really wasn't until I would say I moved to California in high school and I discovered theater that I kind of found my own way with it, where I didn't have to be this shy little girl named Brooke. I could instead play Rizzo in Grease or Dorothy in the Wiz or Reno Sweeney in Anything Goes and play these characters. See, I was always trying to be Olivia Newton-John in Grease. I wanted to be Sandy,
Mhm.
but not because I thought it was the best part in the movie, not the best part in the play, obviously. We're Rizzos, you and I.
Right.
But
Right.
I wanted to be Sandy because I wanted to get the guy in the end.
I
Because I was
understand
missing
that.
a dad. We're getting right into it. My dad wasn't really around. He would visit and then he would go work on the slopes for a very long time. So I think from a very young age, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to have a guy in my life. And these roles like Sandy in Grease, I mean, that's all she was doing the whole movie was, "Oh my god, I love him. Why doesn't he love me? Let's make this happen. Okay, I'll change myself to get him," you know?
Mhm.
So, that was a very early thing, and I took that pattern that would last for the half a century of my life. I would take that pattern and use it in art and use it in musicals or on stage or whatever. So all meant to be, but a very interesting I've never actually said all that. That's a really interesting thing that I know is true, but I've never, like, verbalized it in that way. So, look at what you're doing to me, Candy. You're just pulling it out.
Well, maybe we'll be crying by the end.
Yeah, yeah,
Hopefully
I know, my
hope
eye keeps watering.
mine too, but I think it's
Mine's
'cause
getting ready. Oprah, what are you doing?
So, okay, you said your dad went out to the slopes. Were your parents married?
Yeah, so, what's funny? My parents were married many times, as have I been. My mother was my dad's 4th wife. My father was my mother's 3rd husband, and, so they were married. They got married right before I was born, and then but my dad was like he was kinda always off doing stuff, whether he was mining gold or in a creek somewhere, thousands of miles away, or he was, like, up on the pipeline working, like, underground or above ground, just he would bring home the bacon after, like, a long period of time. And so my mom was a workaholic because she was kind of like an alone mom, she wasn't single, but it kinda seemed like it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, he would visit, I remember I have this really great story in my upcoming memoir. You'll love this. We would go pick him up at the airport, and maybe it was 2 or 3 times a year. So it was like a special visitor. And why I picked mysterious men for so long. So we go to pick him up at the airport, and at the Anchorage airport back in the '70s, they had these perfume machines on the wall, and you could put in a quarter and press the perfume that you wanted. And I knew my mom had a bottle of Chanel #5, so I knew what that smelled like. So I must have been, I don't know, 6? I'm not even, maybe 6. Put the quarter in, and it was low, like, for an adult, it would have been at, like, maybe waist level, but I was a little kid. So I put the quarter and I press a button and it shoots me right in the eye. So so I'm, like, crying, and my eyes all watering up, and then, like, I think that was a trip where his flight was not delayed, so he greeted, like, again, back to the eyes, like, just like this glued together eye all red and sore from Chanel #5 because I wanted to smell good for my dad.
Yes.
It's kinda sweet. It's a sweet
It is
story, but
very sweet. Did your mom know that it was gonna squirt like that and she just let it happen, or she didn't know you were doing it?
I don't remember her supervising that. I probably asked her for the quarter
Yeah,
and then did my own thing, I mean, I think she was dealing with my sister who was young, quite young. My sister is 3 years younger, so my sister was a
okay,
toddler. So she's probably had her hands full changing a diaper right next to me or something, but,
okay.
I
That's
mean,
so funny.
yeah, that's right, and, I did wear Chanel #5 in my 20s for a brief period because I heard Marilyn Monroe had, but
Mm.
I don't touch the stuff now.
Yeah, I can't even wear perfume anymore because my boyfriend can't handle any scents whatsoever,
Oh. But he has common sense, and that's what we like. I
as
don't know,
far as we
I'm
know.
the same way. Sometimes I'll wear a little bit of, like, hippie oil because 'cause I'm a yoga teacher, but I don't like to spray on big perfumes anymore,
Yeah.
and one of the things I absolutely dislike are those oil plugins that everybody uses
I
because it's
know.
so bad for you, and it cloaks their whole home in, like, this smell of, like, oil powder. So, yeah, I'm not big I prefer natural smells. I wish I could smell you right now through the camera because I like
Yeah.
people's scents,
Yeah.
but not like, made sense, not stuff my sister has a really expensive bottle of perfume, and I think it's, like, $500, and it smells really nice, but I just, can't bring myself to spend money on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm kinda glad that it's been cut out of my budget. I can spend that money on other things now.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay, we've moved you to LA. When was that?
So what happened was, I was working with a songwriter in Anchorage, Alaska after I opened for all the celebrities and everything. We're like, "We gotta go big, we gotta do more, get you out of Alaska." So the songwriter, his girlfriend happened to know a guy that had worked with Olivia Newton-John. He knew her camp, and so he wanted to manage me, and so we went to visit him, and he set up a bunch of, record label appointments. I won't name the record label, but I did have one pretty big meeting, and I was only 13 when this happened, but because I had some songs we'd written in Alaska. I go into this audition meeting, my mother and the manager go on in and sit with the guy," and I go into this room in this record label. And I swear, in the movie of my life, the room was, like, all dark furniture, dark room with probably red lights and fog machines, right? And then he's sitting there literally smoking a cigar, and on the perimeter of the whole room is just, like, torn out Playboy magazine pictures. Like, I can't remember if they were in frames or if they were just put but they and you remember when Nastasha Kininsky
Yes.
had this photos with the snake?
Yeah.
So that I remember that one specifically. This was, like, early '80s, was up above his head while I was talking to him. And for a 12, 13-year-old girl, like, looking up at naked ladies while I'm trying to, like, talk about being a singer, it was, like, really weird.
I can
And,
probably guess who you were meeting with.
I don't know. It was the wrong record label for me, but, for a lot of reasons, but he had me stand up and hold a pen and sing along to my music.
Oh,
And I remember kinda step touching, being petrified, because not only because of all the naked ladies looking at me, the scary man smoking a cigar, and then being too young, just
yeah.
way too young to do this. I've seen videos of Bruno Mars, like, singing dressed as Elvis when he was a little kid. I mean, that kid was ready. I was not ready. So I came out of the room and I watched him tell my manager that I wasn't ready, but to bring me back another time, and that was the last time that I went there. So
Mm.
we eventually moved to California after those meetings that I had, and, yeah, I did Star Search. I was in high school then, and then, like, things just
You
kinda fizzled,
you
after
went
that.
on the show or you auditioned?
I was on the show. My father actually took me to an open call at the studio they used to have back in the '80s. It was on Sunset. I think it turned into the Nickelodeon studio after that, but, I think it's no more now, but I was there with my dad in line, and they cut off the auditions, there were too many people, and as we were going home, we found a sheet of paper on the ground that said, "If you couldn't sing for us today, send in a video." So
Oh,
we did, and they actually picked me, which was kinda shocking because it was me singing in a nice little prom dress, one of my ballads all sweet and pretty, and, I got on the show. And that was wild, and I remember being in high school and everybody in high school knowing and feeling like an outsider. I just wanted to have friends, I didn't really want that. It
mhm,
just was something that felt I didn't even know who I was. That's why I have a lot of, you know, empathy when you see these younger kids making it. You're
mhm.
like, "How are they gonna be?" "What's gonna happen down the road? Are they gonna be okay?" "Who do they
Right,
really wanna be?" You know?
right.
And I think I just being moved from Alaska to California, I've always been really adaptable, but I think I was kinda lonely and very shy. I
Hmm.
didn't have that crazy wild inner performer that all the fun you and I have had at Disneyland together, like, that was not there yet. I was
Well,
too
I
young.
had not I have not met the shy Brooke. I know that you have a deeper side to you for sure. But yeah, but you know
I
what?
mean, I feel a little shy right now, a little shy because I decided that when you asked me to do this, I wanna talk about all of it, you know? So it's a little bit vulnerable, but, like, you know me, I've always just told it. It's like, I don't care.
Well, you don't I mean, I like that you don't hide things. People get to see who you really are, and that's brave. A lot of
That's the
people
point,
can't do
isn't
that.
it? I mean, why else live? Why else have this journey we're on? Why else have a story? Everybody's got a story, but I think with social media and being online, we all are trying really hard to look good and do better than everyone else. And really, like, I look at all these wrong turns as actually beautiful lessons that were supposed to happen. I thought they were
Yes.
wrong, but no. I was supposed to leave Alaska when I was a little bit too young, go to California, sing for the guy that had the pornography on his wall. It's like, it's okay. It was all supposed to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think when others hear stories like yours, it gives them courage to maybe step out of their comfort zones. You did when you were younger and maybe not always by choice, but you had somebody supporting you,
Yeah.
knowing
I
you could fall back. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I
And
had
maybe sometimes not, but we'll get to some of that.
yeah, now, like, my mom was probably what some people would think of as a stage mom, but she saw something in me that I was afraid to express, but I loved it, you know? And she gave me that push, and if she hadn't done that, I don't think I would have done it, you
Yeah.
know? So, it's really she said I was singing the ABCs instead of talking? So, like, I'm really grateful that she gave me that push and took a chance and, I mean, uprooted us, took us to California. That was a really it's an amazing story. Like, sometimes when I look back on it, I go, "I can't believe that happened. That is that
Yeah.
me?" Like, you look back at your inner child, when you were a little kid, and you go, "Did I do all that? I don't know?" I know you've got stories about record deals too?
Well, our our lives parallel a lot.
Mhm.
But you've got I mean, and there are things that I've experienced that you haven't, but I just I love talking to you because there's always just this another little nugget that's interestingly profound.
And my dad gave golden nuggets to Doc Severinsen when I opened for him. So I love that you just said that. Yeah, like just weird things like that. My dad was a gold miner. And when I opened for Doc Severinsen, not knowing who this man was, my dad's like, here, give one to Johnny, like Johnny Carson, So my parents were having a good time too, It was
Good,
fun for them.
good.
Yeah.
What high school did you go to when you were
So
out here?
so I went to El Dorado High School, which was in Placentia. Well, it's still in Placentia, California. So I was a golden
Okay,
hawk. That was our mascot. And what was so cool about going there, I think it's okay to say this, to name some people, like just because we went to school together. I was going to El Dorado and I was in a rock band with all the older boys. They were all seniors. But two of the boys that were one was younger than no, both were younger than me. So Josh Fries and Jason Fries, who ended up being the sons of our boss at Disney, Stan Fries. So Josh and Jason were both doing rock bands in high school at the same time I was, and all the guys in my rock band knew them. And Josh and Jason are now in, celebrity tours. They've been very successful. So it was funny that we were all at the same high school, and I never actually met Jason until he was in my band, like in my 20s, but we were all so closely having these similar journeys. So it was really kind of cool. Placentia, California, of all places. So that was
okay.
wild. Yeah.
Is that how you started at Disney then?
No, what's crazy is, I did a bunch of theater after high school. And then I was dating a guy from one of my plays I was in, and one of his friends was a drummer, and the drummer's like, "Hey, you should be in our band." And I'd been in rock bands here and there with my own music and with high school, but hadn't really been in the cover band world. And so I was like, "Okay." So I started going and sitting in with this band that was doing like the Orange County bars, and then it turned out that we all ended up in that band together, went to Vegas to do the bars in Vegas. And one night, Jason's dad was coming to watch him because he was in Vegas, and that was Stan. He saw us performing, and we were all just really young in our 20s, cute little things. And he's like, "Hey, you should come audition for the Tomorrowland Terrace gig." And so, like, maybe a month later, we went and performed for them, and they loved us. And that started like 15 years of my booking bands there, like nonstop. And
Okay,
Stan was
and
amazing. He would be like, why don't you create a all girl band for me? Why don't you create, I don't know, an R&B band? Why don't you create, he would just give me these wonderful opportunities. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gotten my chops. My chops is one singer to another, our vocal chops, because I
right.
was singing at Caesar's Palace from 9:30 at night to 3:30 in the morning. And that was one kind of chop. But then doing Disney 5 shows a night, 3 nights a weekend, you know, you're tired at first, and then you start to just be like, "Huh, this is nothing." I'd have like a burger and a Coke before the last show. If I did that now, I'd throw up. But Stan gave me my chops, my vocal chops. He really did. So that was a great time. And I
Okay,
met you because of that.
yes, and that was interesting because I had started my own band,
Mhm.
but I was singing with, like, 3 or 4 other bands.
You were such a little trollop. Yes. You're with
Somebody from
everybody.
one of those other bands
Yeah.
said you were looking for another chick singer, and I was like, "Well, why
Yeah, I
not?
think
Let's do
yeah, I
another
think what
one."
would happen is people would want to, sub out, which that phrase makes me laugh because then I would come to a career later that uses the word sub. But we would always say, I need a sub. I need to sub
Yeah,
out. And so that one singer was like, oh, you need to meet Candi, connected us. And I think I first started booking you with me at Disneyland. And then it was like, oh, wow. And then we started doing some of my weddings and corporates together. And that was when I was living in Hollywood. But yeah, she hooked us up. And you were my girl for a while until you got too
well,
busy.
we
Your own band got really busy. But yeah, it was always me and you and our friend April.
yes, we had a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
Yeah.
You guys weren't too cool to be as goofy as I am on
I was
stage.
just thinking that the three of us together, it was like the Three Stooges, but sexy with sequins and lipstick. Like nobody was like, whoop, 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 but it was like, yeah, you two were like, you and April Molina were like the two that we could just really riff off each other on stage, but keep it on the tracks at the same time.
Right.
And the jokes always worked. It was never like, oh, don't call her again. You know what I mean? It was like it always worked. It was great.
Well, the energy at Disney it's so different on that stage than anywhere else. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is about that. Is it because we're coming up from underground? I mean, it's so strange to me.
It's strange, like, good? Like
No, it's really good. It's just such a different, like, it's almost okay, the person that introduced us was Sandy Allen, and
right.
I
Yeah.
think she had made a joke somewhere along the lines that her mom always called it jump up down.
Jump up, down.
And it's
Yeah, yeah,
almost
yeah.
like we were wind up dolls. It's like, okay, the stage is getting ready to go. And it's almost like somebody was downstairs winding us up. And as soon as
Like a pop-up
that
Jack
we
in the
hit the
Box.
air, it's like we were, I don't know how else to explain it, but I'm
You know,
not like that on any other stage.
it was weird too because, we would do that show, and I remember we'd come up for the first of 5 shows, and the sun would still be out. It would be really hot.
Yeah.
And but then as that show ended, things would start to cool down, and you would feel warmed up. Like, not even just vocally, but just like your show body felt ready for the next 4 shows. So I'd
Right.
always tell people if they were coming to monitor me for their wedding or an agent, I'd be like, "Why don't you come to, like, the second show or the 9:05 show?" Because then I would know we were in the zone, but
Hmm.
yeah, that first show, I always felt like it was like, like trying to get the train moving, and then it would slowly move. You get out all the technical problems. Because that
Right.
stage, you were always happy if you had, I mean, there was a couple of great sound men, but Ruben was always everyone's favorite. And if you saw Ruben at the soundboard, you were like, "Oh, thank God. Okay. It's going to be a good night." Because it's like the monitors were older than the park itself. Like those monitors that were stuck to the front, that they're no longer there. Now I think it's a Star Wars show.
I was
But
going to
the monitors
say,
would be like painted over, and like, but Ruben had been there so long, he knew how to get out all the bugs from the previous show, whoever'd been there last week. So yeah, that was a great training ground, wasn't it?
it
I
was.
mean, if you could perform on that stage all night, you could do anything. I mean, you could walk into an American Idol competition and win. It was just like that stage taught me everything. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful to Stan. He's
Yeah, it was
amazing.
great. It was
Yeah.
awesome. And I'm grateful that you invited me to join you there.
It was really fun. Oh, yeah.
So, okay, from Disney,
Mhm.
where did we go from there? Did you ever get burnout or did you take breaks or did you
No,
continue
we
in
were We were pretty much there. I think I first started playing there before Stan gave me the audition. I had been a sub over there for Michelle Duffy when she was in Voyager, and Donna McDaniel and Tom Bagley's band Voyager. So that was the late '90s, and but by the time I started doing my own bands there, it was like 2001 to 2016, I think. So about 15 years. But it never went away. Sometimes there might be a couple months where they wouldn't have a band because they'd have some special events, or they would cut the hours. So they used to have a band like every night,
Mhm.
like in the summer. And then sometimes they'd only have a band for 2 days of the weekend. And it just depended on the amusement park traffic, how many people were coming into the park and what was going on. But I was there at least once a month. And then usually if I said once a month, it would be like for a whole weekend. And then the best part was when I had 2 or 3 bands, different products, and they were all rotating, and it was like, like I felt
Yeah.
like I felt like I had an empire at one point. But, and I'm sure having double bookings for your bands, it's like it got to be too much where when I finally did cut a lot of the things loose and just go back to one, it felt like I was handling my stuff again. When it gets so big and you're managing so many, I mean, at one point I must have sent out 100 1099s one year. Just too many people. You can't have quality control when you're the only one who's really like making sure everything is going perfectly.
Yeah.
So there was a time like where I was really doing well with like a lot of products, and then I was like, "Oh, dial this back. This is too much." So, but
Uh,
that's a good lesson. That's a good lesson to learn.
Is your band still performing?
Yeah, I still have, so here in Vegas, I just book myself as Brooke Wilkes or Brooke and the Boys, and then in California, when I drive to California for gigs, it's Stellar. So Stellar was one of my bands I created. I was in the Antics, that was the band that got the first gig at Disney that I joined that was already going. They were called the Angry Inch. And
Oh,
then Scott Doyle, who you might know, was leaving because he was doing dueling piano gigs. He was doing so well just with him and another guy playing pianos and drunk people yelling requests. He's like, you guys need to replace me. So I came in, and because I've been working in corporate industrial work, doing like a lot of these Andrew Lloyd Webber to people eating dinner, like for a corporate party. I met a lot of these booking agents. So I already had some contacts to book the Angry Inch, which we now called Antics, because I didn't
okay.
have an Angry Inch. So, we got rid of that. This is before the musical Angry Inch Hedwig.
Uh,
So we called it the Antics, and that was going well. And we were young, cute, and very busy, got a lot of bookings. And then I had so much traffic that I created Stellar, and that went really well, and that was a different vibe with a lot of people you know. But then, like, things change, transition, people join, create their own bands, move on. So Stellar was one that I always kept, but the cast has you've been in a version of it. The cast has, like, morphed, and there's still people. We just did a gig last week, and there was a couple original people from 20 years ago that were on the gig with me, and that was really great. So I
yeah,
work occasionally in California, just if the money's right and I can get the people I want.
right. And we need to find out before we finish today where you're performing in Vegas. So if any of our viewers want to see you,
Oh,
then they
yeah.
can
Well,
they can come check you
here's
out.
here's the thing about Vegas. One of my acquaintances here who has a show like yours, he said, keep it evergreen when we talk about stuff. So here's the thing. Like right now, we're doing this interview in 2026, and right now I'm playing at the Westgate, which is Elvis's house, which used to be the International Hotel, and I also play at the Tuscany in the Piazza Lounge. And but that could change. Like one thing we all joke about here in Vegas is, hey, if you have a gig, you're lucky because they're always changing. Just like TLT, just like Disney, gigs get canceled when the hotel occupancy is low.
Right.
So I'm lucky to have those two gigs right now. And then if you're
Good.
watching this later, you'll have to Google me and see where I am because things are constantly changing.
And we'll get those links up too so
Yeah.
that
Oh,
people
thanks.
can follow you.
Thank you.
Okay. You were starting to, well, I want to say it was probably when you and I were performing together and hanging out. I feel like it may have been just maybe a year and a half or 2 years in where you started to kinda delve into another part of your life.
Another part of subbing. I
Yes.
was subbing as a singer for different bands we know. Yeah. Now, do you recall what year we met? I feel like we first started gigging together in 2009, but it could have been earlier. It's hard to say.
It is,
I was still
that
blonde, I'm pretty
that's
sure. Yeah.
that's that's probably about right.
Yeah. So what happened was I had gotten I've been married 3 times. I'm a 3-time optimist. So the second marriage had ended in 2005, and um I had never sowed my oats or anything like that, and a friend told me about Craigslist, and I went on Craigslist in 2005 and accidentally met a dom on Craigslist, and I didn't know what that was. So I first put my toe in the 50 Shades of Grey world in 2005 because I met this bizarre yet very attractive man. And he showed me some of the lifestyle aspects. I would go to his house and we would do what we call in the lifestyle a scene, where he would pull out his flogger or tell me to get down on my knees or whatever. I tell it more graphically in my memoir, but that was like an interesting moment. And then I got out of there because he was very unsafe. He was doing things physically and emotionally that were not okay. They didn't feel good.
We might have to I don't wanna interrupt your flow. We might have to back up just a little bit because
Yeah,
some
yeah.
of our listeners might not have any idea what you
No,
are
good.
talking about.
Yeah, please, if I'm speaking, like, in tongues, you need to tell me because I do get carried away with the lingo. So you ask those questions and
Well,
please let
like
me know.
the dom and the sub,
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
it's
Explain,
pretty
yeah.
self-explanatory, but why don't we just start at the very beginning of what that means?
Yeah. So the dom role is someone who likes to be dominant, usually in the bedroom, although sex is not always involved. Sometimes it's like a mental, emotional exchange. And then the sub is the person who wants to be submissive, wants to be controlled. And then there's supposed to be a negotiation, a consensual discussion about hard limits, which are the do's and the don'ts for each person, or the maybes. I call it the kinky traffic light when I used to teach classes. I'd be like, what's green for you? What's yellow and what's red? And that made it easy for couples to decide who's in what role, who's okay with this. And then I would even make people write down on a board the no's, like not the no's, but the no ways, so that they don't do it. So this guy who I met that I didn't even know what BDSM was, bondage, discipline, and sadomasochism, he wasn't doing any of those discussions. He was just inviting me over and doing stuff. And then I would drive home in what we call subspace, wondering what just happened. Why do I feel so great? Or I'd leave another time and feel lousy, which was called sub drop, where he didn't do what we call aftercare, which is take care of me and talk to me, bring me
Mm,
back to a normal place, a normal feeling. So he didn't explain any of that. In a way, it reminds me of I absolutely love Interview with the Vampire, especially the new TV show on AMC. And if you're a fan of that book or show or movie, Louis, the new vampire, talks about how Lestat, the older vampire, told him nothing. He just bit him and churned him. And that's kind of how it felt. I was like, what is all this? Why do I feel this way? And I kind of shelved it. I
mm,
shelved the whole thing. And because I was single and newly divorced, I started going online. I think it was Match.com at the time, back when you, instead of swiping, you were typing on your
right.
laptop. And I was meeting guys and go out with guys. And then I would do what we call in the lifestyle top from the bottom, where I was trying to get these guys I would meet to be dominant, and I would explain what I want, and they'd be like, "You are crazy," or they'd be into it, but it was short-lived because of the energy of it, you know? Um,
Question for you.
yeah. Yeah.
On Match, when you were, conversing with these people or even meeting up with them, were they into the lifestyle? You just were trying to see if
I
they'd
was
be
just
into trying it.
I was wanting to meet again that childhood thing of trying to fill that empty chair where my dad was supposed to be. I wanted a man in my life. But because I had come off of this amazing, life-changing, eye-opening experience with this dom from Craigslist, I was like, I want to incorporate that in because it it was really doing something for me. And what it was doing was creating that kind of parental thing that
Mhm,
I lacked.
mm,
So it wasn't about having intercourse. It was about the mental exchange and having rules and tests to pass, you know? And sometimes the physicality would be dominant, which was awesome because that would just reinforce the mental stuff for me.
mhm,
If someone's being dominant in the bed, it can only help but complement the dominant rules and regulations that you've consensually agreed to. But I was kind of doing the same wrong thing that the first guy did to me, where I was just telling the person I was dating, this is what I want, or asking them to do it in the middle of everything, which is never a good idea because you're not getting consent before you're worked up.
you hadn't really been trained, so how
No,
would you know that?
exactly. And neither had that first guy. That first guy, I think he learned it from I think he had told me he learned it from a woman he'd been dating. And so he never really had a mentor. I remember even asking him because I was going to play parties to watch people.
Now what's a play party?
So play parties like the dungeons, like the local play spaces in LA would have these parties. They'd have theme nights. And so I he wasn't giving me enough attention and I wanted to learn more. I could tell he didn't really know what he was doing. So I found these websites and I went to these play parties and I would watch people interact and have a scene together where there's a dom and a sub and they're interacting and they're doing it because in the space there because they love to be watched. But I was learning what I liked and what I didn't like from that, and then if you're there, especially a woman alone at the time, people were either coming up to you asking you if you wanted to play because they wanted to dom you and flog you and spank you or whatever. Or most of the time, because I was a woman in my mid 30s at the time, I had men coming up to me wanting me to be their mistress because of how I presented in the world. I didn't know I came across as strong and dominant and powerful and very like, I don't know. I don't know who you would think of, but Madeline Kahn and heels and a whip. I don't know. But I just I didn't know that. I just felt like the shy little girl from Alaska who wanted someone to take care of her, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And this
Mm-hmm.
seemed like to be the way to do that, you know?
So these parties, they were literally people putting on little plays, or what?
No, it was more like it's a big warehouse with all this dungeon equipment everywhere and lighting, good lighting. It was dark in there. People were half naked, some were naked. You could walk over to someone who's on the St. Andrew's cross and they're cuffed to it and they're ankled to it and someone's flogging them and you can just keep your distance, a respectful distance. You're not supposed to talk and distract. So people would be like whispering or just watching and you'd be enjoying their scene, but it wasn't one at a time. It wasn't like there was a stage and sometimes there'd be a show, but usually dungeons would have separate playrooms everywhere and you could walk to the different playrooms and voyeur. As long as
Mm,
you were respectful. There were rules and there were dungeon monitor people whose specific job was to watch the crowd, make sure no one was being out of line, you know. And nobody wanted to get kicked out because they want to come back. So people
right,
would behave. They understood
right,
the rules because they were lifestylers. Someone had trained them. So
right.
I'm learning as I'm watching. And this was from 2005 to say 2009, around the time I met you. I was going every once in a while. I still didn't know the community. I didn't have a bunch of kinkster friends. I was just doing this to poor vanilla guys, vanilla being guys who didn't know what this was, who were just looking probably to date or hook up. They didn't know that I hoped they had a flogger or, like, I don't know, a feather or a blindfold or whatever. But it wasn't until I met you, it was all your fault. And then I started going to the actual play parties again. So there's a big lull where I avoided them. And I was in a couple of serious long-term relationships and I would just tell those guys what I wanted and they would do their own research on their own but I was never impressed because I knew more than they did, you
Okay,
know?
so I was under the impression that you had been in a polyamorous relationship and the person that you were with was the one that encouraged you into getting involved in this lifestyle.
Yes, right around the time I met you, I met him right after. And he was the one who got me to go to get a job at the dungeon, to get trained at the dungeon as a sub, as a submissive, a professional submissive. He also encouraged me to go to all the play parties with him and he introduced me to like everybody. He knew everybody. He was very, very crucial to my creating my kink persona, which to this day I named myself Hudsey Hawn because of a resemblance to Kate Hudson and Goldie Hawn.
And
So
before I even knew, maybe this is when you told me, because
yeah,
I used to tell you all the time, when you smile, just like when Kate Hudson is on the screen, she just lights up and you
yeah,
always
yeah.
have that. And I was like, you look like Kate Hudson. And then it wasn't long after that you told me of your name, which is
Hudsey. Well, and Han came later. I added Han as a joke about when I became a mistress because all of my mentors in the dungeon had two names, like my friend Nikki Rouge and Snow Mercy. They all had two names, and I was just submissive Hudsey. And
okay.
then once I decided to become a pro switch who does both sub or dom, and then finally a pro dom, a mistress, then I added the Han as a just kind of a nod to Goldie. But the first day that my boyfriend at the time sent me over to the dungeon, and I had then you had to be referred. So one of the mistresses at a play party we went to vouched for me, and I went for an interview, and I was 38, and which is kind of old for a sub in a dungeon. Not a sub in general, but to be a pro sub, you're really supposed to be a young, cute little thing, looks good in a schoolgirl outfit, and I was very much a lady. But I went in, and the desk mistress, Lady Francesca, who's a good friend of mine still, she said, "What do you want your name to be?" And I remember saying all these names, like, names everybody thinks of, like goddess names like Isis or Phoenix or whatever. And she's like, "We have 3 of those. We have, that person still works, da da." And then it just dawned on me, everyone's been saying, and you had recently, I think then too, that I look like Kate Hudson. Okay, what could I do with that? Katie Hudson, Hudsey. And she's like, "Oh, I like it." No one's got that name in any of the communities anywhere in the world. I've never, because she knew everybody. I've never heard
Mhm.
of a Hudsey. Okay, that sounds good. And that was how Hudsey was born, like in 2010. I started working
Okay.
at the dungeon. And it was really great because my Dom at the time, my boyfriend, he not only did he want me to work there, which I think I later realized he liked that he owned me and he was allowing men to pay to play with me. I think he liked that, like that he made that happen. It was like a kink or something. But I would come home and tell him about the sessions that I had, and I would tell him everything that I learned. Pretty soon I was more skilled than him because I was working with some of the top dominant mistresses in the world. Like we'd have women come in from Europe or New York that were just doing a week at our dungeon, and all the men who were local that lived in LA would, or in Orange County, would drive in special to see her, you know?
Mhm.
So it was a really cool time. It was a really cool time for BDSM. This was right before 50 Shades of Grey came out, the book, like a few years before.
What,
So,
as a sub, might you do? Like,
okay,
give
so
us examples.
So a pro sub, so there's rules in the dungeon that there wouldn't be with your partner at home, right? Because you want to keep it legal.
Because you're making money?
Well, yeah, because you don't want to go to jail. You know what I mean? You don't want to be a prostitute. You want to keep it in the kink I guess rule box. Like if you're working in a dungeon, at least back then, can't speak for now, but back then, you keep your undergarments on. You you don't have sex. You don't have genital or oral sex. And then as far as things, no exchange of bodily fluids from either person. And then as far as things the client can do with you, if you're a sub, they can spank you, they can flog you, they can cane you, which is a bamboo stick. This is all negotiated before you go into a scene, though. You have a little interview with them. Um, we even did candle wax play, but it was very messy. There's a bunch of rules about if you could do that and how, because it was a big cleanup. Um, anything. What I found is that, especially as I became a pro dom, is that most of the clients just wanted a GFE, what we call a girlfriend experience. They didn't necessarily, I would say 85% of the people that came in there just wanted to act out some fantasy or some memory. There was a lot of
Mm,
like kind of acting going on. I got so good at improv there, like really good. It was great for acting. And a couple actresses unknown did come there and learn a lot. Because you had to like do an hour of role play
right.
where you're leading the scene. Even if you're the sub, you're leading the scene. Like and it was always, "I want you to be my neighbor, and you come over and then you dominate me," or "I want you to be the sweet girl next door who needs my help and her boyfriend's gone." It's just like, and the acting, doing all this acting together.
Mhm.
So, but as the negotiations would happen, most of the time it was okay. Some of it was, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do that," and they would leave. But for the most part, the people that worked there had their regulars. They had the people that would see them all the time. And, you know, uh, they knew what they wanted, and you would negotiate. But what's interesting is that for one person, I would be fine doing a scene with one guy, but then a different girl couldn't do that scene with that same guy because the chemistry was off.
Mm,
So we all had our hard limits, or, our comfort levels that were different. And I found that to be really interesting because I wondered if it meant I was more numb or if I just got along with the person better, you know?
Mm.
You
I
just don't know.
I was one of the reasons why I find this fascinating hearing from you is because you always speak of it with such credibility
Thank you.
and well, because when people don't know about it, they I think people tend to maybe have an idea of it being, maybe seedy or trashy or something like that.
It can be, for sure.
Well, but the way it comes across when you speak to me about it, it sounds therapeutic.
It's very therapeutic, especially for well, it was for me too, but the clients. It's a form of therapy, and I've had psychologists send clients to me. I still have I still like I don't do scenes anymore, but I
Mhm,
do coaching,
mhm,
like we're doing right now on the camera. Yeah, that I got a lot out of it emotionally, spiritually. It taught me a lot, and I think that not everybody needs to work in a dungeon, but being in that part of the lifestyle was very therapeutic for me. It actually taught me a lot about myself and why I've done the things I've done in my life because I've watched so many, it was 90% male clients, but I watched all those men come in and share their stories with me. And we got down to why they were doing what they were doing. Why did they want me to do that? Why did they want to
mhm.
do that? And it was fascinating. I can pretty much tell what somebody likes by talking to them. It's really interesting because I was on another podcast a while ago, and we were talking about it, and I said in the podcast that for me, a lot of the foot fetish sessions, like I was always ticklish. I mean, Candy, you couldn't touch my feet, not even in a pedicure. I was like, I'd be kicking the lady in the face. But through that work, my feet didn't care anymore. And guys would be putting your whole foot in their mouth and staring up at you. And I was on a podcast recently and he asked me, why do you think vanilla guys like it so much? I go, well, it's a chance to escape masculinity. It's a chance to be less in the male chair, and they're being very submissive when they do it, but also it's a little bit phallic
Mhm.
without it being, something that's a phallus. You know what I mean? I'll never forget after I watched the interview that we did about that later, and one of the viewers wrote something like, "You know what you're talking about. That's not true." And I wanted to write, but I don't feed trolls. I wanted to write, "Well, I didn't mean you, honey. I just meant the 500 men I did the scene with, but not you." Because think about how many times I've done a foot session, right?
Mhm.
It's probably I worked in the dungeon on and off for 10 years, so I probably did 200 of those, and you see a repetition. You see a common thread in all the clients. They're all different people with their own lives and their own stories, but when your foot's in someone's mouth, you kind of get to know something about them, especially when it's the same thing over and over and over. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like it gives men who might be a little homophobic or a little afraid of that oral desire or fixation, it gives them a chance to explore it with a woman if they're straight or and I'm sorry I'm speaking in hetero so much, but it's just because I'm hetero, so that's my angle. That's where I think from. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you learn so much about people. That's a really long answer, but
It's okay. Did
yeah.
you ever have clients who got attached to you more than what the goal was there? Like, they wanted to know you
Like date
outside?
me?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, not exactly. I think there was like one guy that I really hit it off with the first session, and I never did illegal activity. I always kept it in my pants. But I thought he was really great, and it was his first time there. And I said, "Hey, if you ever wanted to hang out, like get to know each other, that'd be great, but you wouldn't be able to come back here. So you have to decide which you prefer." And of course, we ended up seeing each other on and off for a while. And I introduced him to some fun people to let him keep going on his journey, you know, when we were done. I'm real good like that. I'm such a connector. Then there was a lovely female client who a therapist sent to me, and we did some great work for her because she was trying to work through her intimacy blocks. And after our work was done, we just stayed friends because she's
Mhm.
amazing. She was kind of like a daughter to me. I felt very mothering with her. So we've stayed in touch. And then I had another therapist who sent someone to me. But once her client and I felt like we concluded the work that he needed, which was exploring his desire for cross dressing and feminization. And not so much that he was wanting to be trans, but more that he wanted to be allowed to embrace that femininity in his sexuality. And once we kind of created that, he ended up meeting a wonderful woman, and now they sometimes visit me in Vegas when they're in town. Like, we have coffee or dinner, and he'll come see me sing, you know? So there's those kind of graduatory relationships where, because I'm not a therapist, I'm not bound by those rules and regulations of, you know, like if I walk into a party and I see someone I've done a scene with professionally, I don't have to leave, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I didn't make a habit of that. You know, I would say 90% of my clients or sessions were people that I saw many times, but it was never outside. And I didn't
Okay.
know their real name. They used fake names too, you
Oh,
know?
okay. All
Yeah.
right. You said you're basically consulting now?
Yeah, so what I do is I don't promote it, but friends like you, if you knew a couple or a person who wanted to talk about this stuff, I could do online coaching. And I'm talking everything from talking about it like we are to and like teaching them how to use implements like the toys,
Mhm.
safety with toys, and also how to negotiate a scene, how to find a partner, you know, all those things that someone who's new to it doesn't know how to do but needs help, you know? But I only go through referral because you end up talking to people online that are they just have a fantasy because they saw a photo of you in latex or something, you know? So
Yeah.
I only talk to people that are through a person I trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
The person that you were with when you started this,
Mhm.
are you still with that person?
Oh, that was 100 years ago. Many moons ago. No, 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 that was like 2010. We were together for almost 3 years, and then someone younger and more submissive came along. That's what happens in the polyamory world. I will
But you
say
were
this.
but you were a sub, so
Yes,
you
but
became
I
a
was
dom.
becoming a switch dom. I was becoming a switch dom. Now, you know, it's just like I was polyamorous with a couple relationships in that world, and what I learned is that it's not for me. Like, for some people, it works really great. Did you ever see that show, Wanderlust, with Toni Collette?
No.
Okay, it's great. It's a great show. I think it's a British show, and what I loved about it is that they're this married couple who their kids are in college, they've been together forever, the passion is gone, and now they're home alone together. The kids are out of the nest, and they suddenly find joy in each other again by watching each other date other people.
Mm.
And then talking about it and getting all turned on, and that makes sense to me for people who've been together forever who maybe they're swinging or maybe they're sharing, maybe they're in a triad, who knows? But, like, most of the time, it doesn't work out, you know?
Would you cons would you consider that in itself a fetish? Because I know some people who it's not even that they are in their current relationship are venturing out, but just talking about past relationships.
Like a
One
fetish,
gets
like verbal?
yeah, like it's almost like they get turned on and it's almost like, okay, well, I have to conquer that old relationship they had. Like I almost consider that a
Hmm.
fetish with some people. And I think too, this is gonna sound so like she's so simplistic, but my fetish, I think this is a fetish. I have a type. I
Mhm.
always want I'm always attracted to tall, dark Italian or Latin men. Like,
They have
that's
to be
my
Latin.
fetish. Well, they've
Oh,
got, like,
you
that
got me
look.
a tall dark. You got me a tall dark.
They've got that,
I don't care what ethnicity though. Um,
but no,
that
it's
see, that's
usually in the Latin. or
Yeah,
Italian,
because you want him to be a good dancer. I you
well,
know,
and some of them don't even like to dance.
I met
But
the guy you're seeing. Is he Latin
he
or
is
no?
not. He's Italian,
Oh, okay.
but he's
You
got that
know,
darker, the coloring and
yeah.
everything.
You know, I think for me, the tall, dark part comes from my dad. That's what my dad looked like. And then I would pick people who were dominant. Thought it, but it was my mom. I'm whispering because she's here. She's upstairs.
Oh, okay.
So, like it's a combination of the two. But yeah, your kinks or I don't know if it's as a fetish. A fetish is more like you like to smell hair while you're doing it, or you like people in rubber, or you know what I mean? But like your proclivity for a certain type of man could very well have gestated from early on in childhood. It usually does. Usually all this stuff comes from something early on. And it doesn't mean we had to have been inappropriately touched by an adult. It just means that we create these ideas as a child, and then we get into puberty, and then we carry them into our relationships when we're older, So I saw that all the time in the dungeon, just people who would tell me these stories. One guy, he liked to be rolled over people on bicycles or cars. And his stepmom and her friends used to stand on him in the kitchen. He was great. He was a great guy.
Oh
He was
my
hilarious.
gosh.
And he'd want us to run and jump on him. And I would never give him my full weight. He was disappointed, but I would have a chair there. And as I would come over, step over him, I would hold the chair with part of my weight. So I wasn't giving him my full, because you can hurt somebody. You got to use, especially with feet sessions too. You got your feet going down to someone's mouth. You got to hold
Yeah.
something for leverage or you're going to kill them, So there's a lot
Well,
of safety.
we did that when we were kids. I mean, my brother and my cousins and I, we had more fun
You better check in with your cousins, see what they're up to.
running and jumping on each other's backs would make us laugh so hard.
Well, now it's making something else hard. I don't know. I just saying, like, I think a lot of it is like the guy I told you about is laying on the floor in the kitchen when he was a kid. His stepmother was not his mother. She was dominant, putting her high heel on him. He liked the high heel marks. So he's
Okay.
bringing that memory back because it collates with his puberty.
Okay. All
So
right.
I remember I was at DomCon, which is a annual convention where all the doms of the world come together, and it's mostly women, and we're all in latex. And I remember me and another dom were in the elevator at the LAX Hilton, and the doors open, and this two young boys with their parents come in and get in the elevator, and we're dying. And then they get out, and I go, "A fetish is born." It's like these poor
Exactly.
kids. These kids are going to be like, why do I like latex?
Oh.
Well, you don't remember, but these two doms were standing and when you were, in LA for your family vacation. I mean, I don't know. Check in with your cousins. That's all I'm saying. See what's
Well,
going
what
on.
about maybe people just want to try something that seems taboo to them, that has nothing to do with
Well, and
anything else?
that goes to straight men wanting straight girls to open the back door. It's like because it's wrong. It's about getting someone to do something that they don't want to or really shouldn't do because it's about being dominant and submissive. It's about that power exchange. We call that a power exchange, or people that are in 24/7 lifestyle, total power exchange, TPE 24/7. I tell you what to wear. I tell you what to eat. I tell you when you can take the butt plug out, whatever it is. Like all of that is mental.
Mm-hmm.
And it all goes back to something early in most cases. Unless it's like that couple in Wanderlust who's just, God, I'm so bored with you. Let's do something, put this in there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
whatever needs to happen to reinvigorate a relationship because relationships are work and they need
Yeah.
fun. They need,
Mm-hmm.
they need something to zhuzh them up, to reignite.
I know of a lot of people who, they date and then they get married and they stop dating. It's like,
Hmm.
no.
I have these friends that met at one of my you remember this. I think you were there. I had one of my garage sales in my apartment in Hollywood because my boyfriend was moving in, and you came
Mm-hmm.
and got a whole bunch of really fun soft t-shirts and boas and things. And there was a girl there, and I won't say her name, but she had short blonde hair, and then a guy there, and they were both friends of mine, but they didn't know each other, and he saw the St. Andrew's cross that was bolted to my bedroom wall by my boyfriend, and he goes, "Oh, are you kinky?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then she was there, and they met at that sale in my living room of my clothes, and they've been together ever since, and that was, like, 2010,
Oh, wow.
and the reason they work is they're both poly, and they both have their own apartments, and they both date other people, but they've been in each other's life all this time. She's even been married once in the middle of all that where they took a break, and they just have their own places, but they're always they spend the night, and they live separate lives, but they always hang out. She even goes on a date with him and another guy that they're friends with. They're in a triad sometimes. It's fascinating, you know? It's like they're still dating. They are still dating.
One.
But, what how many years that's 16 years later.
Mhm.
It's wild. No,
Yeah,
am I doing the math right? They met in 10? Yeah. God, I can't believe how time flies.
I know, it's crazy. Alright, so you weren't you left that relationship,
Mhm.
and were you single for a while? Did you get involved with someone else,
Well, so
or
we had a polyamorous dynamic where he had a sub of his own and I was just his partner, and then I had a sub of my own. So, I had a young man who was like one of the great loves of my life. He really was. He really taught me how to be a great dom. And we dated for a while after that. And then he ended up, getting married and having kids. I mean, that's just what happens. And so I was always seeing somebody. That was just me. I would have like relationships for 2 years if I had one, 2.5, and then it would end, you know? I was very loyal. And I only tried the poly thing with the guy who showed me the dungeon. Like we did that for 2.5 years. And I thought that was great, but I only had the two guys where he had a lot. He had a lot of girls.
Mhm,
It was just
mhm.
me and my dom and me and my sub. And that felt like a really nice triad. Because I was getting the best of both worlds. I was getting to be submissive and dominant. But the jealousies were there,
Well, that's what I was
on
gonna
both
ask.
sides. For me, it doesn't work. I'm not wired that way. I like my person. I just want to devote myself, and that's the inner sub in me probably wanting to be of service, wanting to take care of someone. That's just how I
Mhm,
am.
mhm,
But it works for a lot of people, you know? And I think it works best for the people who have separate homes, who are still kind of solo, you know? And they either that or the married couple who really both want the same thing. They want to
mhm,
reinvigorate. They want to bring I find that triads rarely last because the third wants more.
mhm,
And the couple's like, "Ugh, sorry, we're
mhm.
together. But it can last for a while, you know? It really can. I mean, to me, it's all worth exploring. I don't kibosh any of it. Like, if people are curious and they're both consenting, they should have the discussion. I have a really good friend who you may have met. Her name is Kate Laurie. She's a marriage and family therapist, and she specializes in kink, BDSM, alternative lifestyles. And she wrote a book called Open Deeply, and it's all about navigating polyamory. And she shares a lot of session work in the book about like how she helped people. And it's fascinating. And I always tell my friends who are curious about it that they should read her book. She wrote it for like 5 years. It was very helpful to a lot of people.
How often have you seen a triad? Let's say the third person comes in and one of the originals decides they wanna be with the
The
third.
new person?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen that many triads. Kate has. In my experience of watching people, I feel like the third moves on to a relationship that they've found. Mm. So I think that it can work. I just haven't been out there in the field like researching it.
Mhm, mhm,
In the BDSM community, I see a lot of people cross mingling, play partners, which play can mean also sexual, not just kink implements. But I joked with a friend of mine, he's like, "I'll never be committed to one person. I like to have at least 5 girls going." I'm like, "There's 7 days in the week. Like, how do you cultivate anything when you've got 5?" You know?
Mhm.
I tried dating 2 people at once years ago, and I would forget whose name it was, you know? Like, "Oh, baby," like, it's like so, I don't know how people do it, but some people do it. To me, it's that in that way of polyamory, it just seems like the old days when I was on Match.com where everybody's dating, but nobody tells you they're dating, so they're all
Uh-huh.
dating multiple people, but they just don't talk about it. That's
Yeah.
polyamory too.
Yeah.
You're like a lot of people but you're not making a decision, you know?
Very
So yeah, I mean, I'm actually very vanilla when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't vanilla being basic and normal, I guess. I don't like to do more than one at a time. And now I'm just dating the most amazing person ever, and that's me. I'm just dating me, you
I
know.
like that.
I love it. No, it's not hard, like no complications. For the first it took me a half a century to realize my pattern around choosing and being in relationships. So now I'm just having one with myself and I love
Mhm.
it. I
Mhm.
don't mind if Brooke or Hudsey dates other people. It's just gonna be each other.
I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
I was alone for so long that
How
I
long?
mean, I would date on and off for,
Mhm.
a while, but the relationships just didn't stick for whatever reason because, like you, I had been married a couple of times, and after the
See, I didn't
second
know
one
that.
yeah, after the second and that was in my 20s, so it seems
Mhm.
like it was, like, 9 lives ago, if not more. But,
Yeah.
I just I really needed to question myself and say, "Okay, is my picker off or is it me?" And so rather than carrying any, you know, residual anything that I might have been feeling from past relationships, I wanted to fix me before I
Yeah.
carried any of that into the next relationship. And so I could tell real quick if someone was compatible with me or not, and sometimes there would be maybe 1 or 2 things, but it wasn't the full package, whether it was with me
Yeah.
or with them. And
Right.
so, I would say from probably age 30 until, I don't know, I've been with Michael almost 6 years now, and I'm
Wow.
54. So I was
Wow.
by myself for a long time, but I spent a lot of time doing work on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's so important. And I've been alone for 3 years now, a little over 3, and I'm very happy about that. You know, I decided to just hang it up in late 2022, and, for the first time in my life, I've always had a boyfriend or a husband, always.
Mhm,
And it's been a really great time. I mean, it got me deeper into my spiritual practice with Buddhism and teaching yoga and just getting to the core of me and the patterns and understanding why I was doing what I was doing, you
mhm,
know? And now people always be like, oh, I have this great person. And like, no, I don't. It's not that I'm against having a relationship. I just feel that when it's right, the universe will bring someone into my path. And then I'll know if that's something I want to do, you know?
right,
But for me now, I'm just really enjoying the quiet aloneness of myself. Not
mhm.
loneliness, but aloneness,
I understand what that
It
means.
feels right?
Mhm. I think when you because I think in the beginning, it can be lonely, but once
Mhm.
you start getting to know who you are, that it's not loneliness anymore. It's being more than content with being alone. And once you can be alone, then I feel like you can be with anybody.
Yeah. Well, and
And it
there's
doesn't mean that
yeah.
you want to be, it just means that you can be. You recognize energies better, if that makes
Well,
any
and
sense.
I had something happen recently that was really great 'cause, once I was divorced, younger guys would always flock to me, and, I was always picking the younger guys 'cause that was what would come, and, then not too long ago, a younger guy showed up, and I found myself like, "Oh, I'll go to this club with some friends and wait for him to come," staying up past what was my bedtime, and then him not making it and me going, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for not coming." Like, and the universe was like, "Oh, you kinda passed the test, but he kinda helped." But yeah, it was like a similar being came into the bubble and nothing happened, but it was a nice little moment of, "Ah, okay. I see it now, and I see where I contorted myself and where I was trying to bend who I am to make this possible connection happen, and I'm so glad it didn't, you know?
Mhm.
It's like, that's not me anymore. I'm too wise. And that's what's great about being in our 50s is we don't have to do that anymore. We've done it so much that we're like, "No, I'm good, I don't
Mhm.
need to repeat that. I mean, it was fun and all, but I don't need to repeat it." It's kind of like when you get rid of all those clothes that have been in your closet forever and you never wore them for 10 years, and you're like, "I'm gonna finally donate these," being the behavior. Just like, "Here you go. It's good. I don't need
Right.
to revisit that," you
Right.
know?
So now the young person that you're talking about, or one of the young men, you remarried, didn't you?
I've had 3 awesome weddings, yes. I'm a three-time optimist. And I'm glad what? I followed in my parents' footsteps. I really believe that people tend to mirror their parents, whether they mean to or not. My mom had 3, my dad had 4. I had 3. Yeah, it was an interesting he's a dear friend, and I love him to death, and he was my greatest teacher. It was, like, nearly a decade of knowing one another, going and that's a lot of change for people to go through separately or together, and what he taught me is that I try to be what someone else wants me to be to make sure that they pick me, and then turns out I'm not that great fun thing they thought I was. That person, the 3rd person, 3rd marriage, like, met Hudsey, didn't meet Brooke. So, when Brooke followed him to Europe and tried to make a life there, there was no Hudsey.
Mhm.
Hudsey was the life of the party. Hudsey was the fun time that he had counted on. So it was a lesson to me about how I packaged myself, and Hudsey's a part of me, but it's not me. It was a
Right.
role. I always equate it to Dwayne Johnson and The Rock. It's very much like that. It's like Clark Kent and Superman, but or it could be flipped, Superman
Mhm.
and Clark Kent, depending on is Brooke Superman or is she Clark Kent? But, that you can't be that forever.
Right.
And I'd already been Hudsey for quite a while before I met him. I'd been Hudsey for how many years? Well, I've been in the lifestyle for 10, 11 years before I met him, you know? So I was
Mhm.
pretty burned out. But
Right.
I loved showing him a great time and introducing him to everybody. I was like the kinky party planner, can make your wishes come true. I got us into all the clubs, got us into the front of the line. I knew everybody. But in his homeland, I was a nobody, you know? So the fun it was over. And it kind of showed me what he'd been wanting to get out of us. And that it was different from what I needed going forward, changing as we all do over time, you know?
Mm.
But I love him dearly, and he taught me so much, and I feel he will be in my life forever, but we're just not romantic anymore, you know?
Where does he live?
I don't wanna say, but he's in Europe. Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanna respect his privacy, but, because of him, I'm a dual citizen, And, like, I love everyone I've met through him, and it was meant to be the way it was meant to be, you know? But I take responsibility for kind of creating this persona that ended up someone falling in love with it and it being somewhat true, but really, after all the hedonism I've experienced, I just kinda wanna Netflix and chill in the vanilla way, I just
Mhm.
wanna sit with someone, watch a movie, make dinner together, have a cozy, comfortable existence. I don't wanna be going out in latex to all the parties. I've been there, done that, and
Mhm.
also, he's younger. So, I'm not gonna begrudge him those experiences that he still wants to have. I had some great ones with him, but he wants to continue that, and I want to be Brooke, you know?
Right.
So, like I said, I have nothing but love for him. I just we had some great a great journey, and I think the journey now with him and I is to just be dear friends and to support one another on what's next for us individually, whatever that is. It makes me emotional talking about it, like, I feel a little sad, but I also feel like an adult about it,
Right.
It feels really good to talk to you about it in a way that's I'm really clear about it, you know? But it
Good.
makes me sad because he's one of the
I can
great loves in
understand.
my life. I'm really lucky to have had a lot of husbands, a lot of great loves. Um, maybe not all the husbands were great loves, but, I've had a lot of boyfriends and a lot of experiences with partners that have made me a better person. So and even the bad experiences were made me a better person, you know?
Right.
I don't think of I have a real hard time with cancel culture with a lot of these guys that are famous and stuff because just like when I was telling you about the dungeon and one client gelling well with one, fetish worker and another one not gelling, like, sometimes it's energy and dynamics and chemistry, and
Mhm.
sometimes a predator is a predator. But,
Mhm.
you know, I just think that everybody's story is different.
Right.
I also think there's some actresses in Hollywood today that got along just fine with that one guy and their careers are going well. I think there's a lot of versions to these stories, and they're all true, you know? So
Well, and
we can
that
talk about
was
that off camera.
you were involved, or maybe you just had your own moments with the Me Too movement?
Oh yeah, I've had a few, a lot, but my my desire to heal was stronger than my need to hold them, to hold on to the pain. But my first one was with my childhood manager where I was still in California. My mom had moved back to Alaska, but I was still finishing high school on my own. And he hit on me. And I remember being devastated because I had known him since I was 13.
Mhm.
So it was weird to be 17 and suddenly he thought I was a woman, you know, because I was on my own and that was tough. I just didn't speak to him again. He just propositioned me and I said no. And then the business relationship just is like we never knew each other. And then the second time I was temping in Hollywood. I wanted to be an actress. Like I really wanted to be an actress and I was in my 20s and I was temping, going to auditions and the temp agency put me in with a very well-known guy in publishing who knew all the stars. He'd published a lot of their memoirs and he was going to get me in to a prominent playhouse in LA. And it turns out it was a playhouse that was rooted in Scientology, but I didn't know that at the time. But then he grabbed and kissed me in the office when no one was there. And I never went back there. And I was
Mm.
too afraid and confused to report him. And who would have believed me? His wife was a very famous actress, and it was just at the time, and it was just I just walked away. And my boyfriend at the time was like, "You need to." I went to the temp agency and told them what happened, but then what do you do? I just
Right.
said, "Please don't send anyone else over there." Mm, So that was those 2 moments were really disappointing because the first one got me into record label interviews. The second one was gonna get me in with this playhouse and the right people. It's all about the people,
Mhm.
meet the right people, get the right manager, but then he chose to grab my face and eat it, and that
Right.
was awful. So that was the day I decided. It was right around when the band asked me to join. It was like the late '90s, and I that was the day I decided I'm not gonna be an actress. And I really wanted to be. And so I just that was when I joined the cover band world. I was my own boss, I created all these bands, and I was able to make a living without people hitting on me, you
Right.
know? It's a very different world now than what you and I went through as young actresses in our 20s. There's a lot
Yeah.
more I feel like there's a lot more protection,
Well,
you
I
know?
feel like I don't know that there's more protection. I think that people got scared.
Mhm.
My take on eh, I think your scenarios are absolute victimhood.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody, not just women, I feel like men too have had their Me Too moments.
Mhm.
but I my take on Me Too isn't so popular. Because
Well, but I'm
uh,
I'm on that middle area with you. I know what you're saying.
yeah, well, and you were way younger and in situations where someone took advantage of you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe that, and the only reason I asked you about it is because of the conversation we were having right before that, and that is
Yeah.
that there are okay, I'll just give examples of me.
Okay.
I would get a phone call from an agent and they would tell me, "Okay, you have an audition and it's gonna be at this place." Well, the place was a hotel room.
With your agent.
Yeah, not with the agent, with the person that I
Yeah,
was
but they
going to
sent you there.
audition with,
Yeah.
and it was gonna
Mhm.
be a male, and so there's something inside of me that goes,
Uh-uh.
"Something's not right here." But
Did you go?
so many no, well, okay, not that time,
Okay.
but it
Yeah, yeah,
happened
yeah.
on many different, in many different on many different occasions, and there's something inside of us as women, I don't know if you wanna refer to it as instinct or the gift of fear, that we
Mhm.
don't listen because
'Cause we wanna be
it's not
nice and
gonna
sweet and polite.
and
Mhm.
it's not gonna happen to us, and I
Yeah.
got lucky because nobody did anything to me, but they were feeling me out for that,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I was strong. I'm a strong enough person to get up and walk out, but what if I hadn't had the opportunity to walk out because they had locked the door? So there's
Yeah.
a part of me that gets really angry about the movement, so to speak, because there are we as women, if we want to be treated as equals, we need
Mhm.
to take responsibility in the decisions we make.
Yeah.
Why are we putting ourselves in those scenarios? And that's not what yours was.
I said something like that on a recent interview, and my friend watched it and said, "You were victim shaming." I said, "No, I just think we have to practice that strong energy inside ourselves because especially our generation where we were taught to be sweet and kind and polite. And it's like when our parents would say, "Oh, let Uncle so and so give you a hug." You'd be like, "I don't want to hug Uncle so and so," but they hug you anyway, and you don't want to, you just have a weird feeling about it,
Yeah.
like that kind of upbringing is going away. It's
Yeah.
fading away with the older generations dying out and the younger generations coming up as parents.
Right.
But it's gonna take some time. Yeah, and I feel the way you do. It's like I'll give you an example, and this is not popular, but I watched the Bikram Predator documentary. I'm a big 26 and 2 is what we call it because Bikram was canceled, so you don't call it Bikram anymore, you call it 26 and 2. It's 26 and 2 postures in hot yoga, 90 minutes. But that whole documentary about him, yeah, it's gross what he did. It's gross. He took people's money, mentored them, and then tried to rape them or rape some of them. And then there's also the flip of that where most people won't go to a hotel room at 3 a.m. and rub someone's feet. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
most of the women in scenarios like that, wherever they are in the world, they weren't given structure by a parent or parents around that stuff growing up. You know what I mean? Like I drove to that guy's house in the middle of the night, that first dom on Craigslist, like a crazy person midnight going to someone's house. I don't even know who they are, going into their house, deciding, yes, even though we didn't negotiate this, I'm going to do everything I can to pass his tests. You can't tell me that that part of that wasn't because I had a missing father and I was looking to please a man to get
Mhm.
some validation. Am I judging everyone else in the world for that? No. But I'm just taking ownership of my own victimhoods at times.
Mhm.
Like when I was talking to the manager in high school and he hit on me, suggested we sleep together because it would make our working relationship better. That's what he said. And I remember I had just had dinner with him to talk about my career. I was 17 and I was telling him how excited I was because I'd started seeing a new boy. And I probably even told him I'd finally, you know, I was telling him about my life almost in the way I maybe had hoped I could have talked to my dad
Mhm.
or my mom, who were both absent at the time. So, does that mean I'm a victim? Is it my fault that he hit on me? No, he shouldn't have done that.
Mm-mm.
That was inappropriate for a lot of reasons. I was underage. He was also my manager. We had
Right.
a business relationship, and he was my mentor. He broke the trust. And then I judged myself for many years. Well, because I told him about the boyfriend, did that mean that we could talk about sexual or romantic things? You know?
Mhm.
But I was just so happy to talk to a man I could trust about, you know what I mean? So there's very blurry things that happen to our brain, especially as young women,
Mhm.
and it's taken me till my 50s to understand that he was wrong,
Mhm.
So there's all these different scenarios, but I definitely know if I'd been taking Bikram's 2-month course, I wouldn't have gone to his room and rubbed his feet. But maybe that 17-year-old would have, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
55-year-old me isn't gonna do that.
yeah,
We're all just on this journey learning, and I don't mean to victim shame at all. I think there are real instances of people being wronged, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, what's your take, and maybe you'll wanna take this out. What's your take on the whole Clinton Monica Lewinsky thing? She's got a podcast now. Do you feel like,
I haven't
um
listened to her.
but I mean, as far as what happened, because she was in her
I th
20s. He
I
was the
think that
president.
yeah, I think that I mean, from what we know, we
Yeah.
weren't there, but
Mhm.
from what we know, he's absolutely in the wrong.
He was her boss. He was the president. And yet at the same time, she was a grown woman, right? Who but what makes it his fault is his position, right?
Exactly. Well, I
His
mean,
position.
even as an adult,
Mhm.
I have had because, we both have worked in the entertainment industry. I worked
Yeah.
on TV and, movie sets for years.
Mhm.
And I was always the person, even like on our gigs, I'm never the one that gets hit on. I must have no bullshit stamped across my forehead. But when I hit 40, something happened. And I don't know if it's because I was becoming more comfortable in my skin and I was projecting something different.
Mhm.
But men who were, like, leading actors started coming out of the woodwork and hitting on me,
Yeah.
and because that had never happened to me before, there was this energy shift for me that I didn't really know how to handle that, and so there was a part of me, looking back on it that I can absolutely understand how a young woman can be groomed
Mm.
or, you know, have some just because they're making you feel like because they're movie stars, and
Yeah.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're paying all of this attention to you.
And they have something you want. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
such a weird dynamic.
mhm. Yeah. It is, and it's like comes back to full circle to what you said a few minutes ago, that we have to take control of that narrative and that role as women.
Yes.
Instead of being the weaker sex, being like, "Oh, I have to wait till I'm invited, or I have to wait till this opportunity happens because of this, that, or the other." Like, it is changing. Again, like, with the new generations coming up, raising children,
Yeah.
Um, but it's not anywhere near completed.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, everybody just got scared,
Yeah, I think
you
the
know?
guys definitely did because but I mean, to an extreme where I think the pendulum has swung so far that people have started man-hating, and I don't think that's fair.
No, I don't either. I don't either. And it comes back to that thing that I saw in the dungeon where one client creeps one person out and another person is fine with them. And it
Mhm.
all comes down to what we've been through in life and how we've navigated those things.
Yeah.
You know, to me, those people in those roles, because we've talked about these things spiritually before privately, where like life is a play and we're parts on this stage of life and we're learning at Earth School, and like these darker energy people, these troubled people that do these bad things are here to help us learn. Even if it's just to go, oh, let me walk around you,
Mhm.
like there's a reason for them, and it's
Mhm.
training. It's a training ground, and it's taken me many decades to navigate around those speed bump people, you know, but I'm thankful for them.
Everyone we come in contact with in more than just a small talk. I mean, and sometimes those people too, but everyone is a teacher.
Yeah,
And I always feel like the people that maybe we absolutely don't get along with,
yeah.
they are our biggest teachers.
There's
A
a
lot of the
wonderful, spiritual sorry to interrupt you, this lady named
Mm,
Carolyn Miss, she talks about how all the spirits are on the other side talking about, "We're all gonna go to this life together. Okay, I'm gonna be the asshole in 2010 that does this. Okay, and I'm gonna date you this year. Oh god, but you were my sister. No, but this time I'm gonna be this." If you believe in that kind of thing. So, I found that really fascinating. What if we all are just putting on these costumes for each other, you
mhm,
know? And none
mhm,
of this is really real. It's all a simulation to, broaden our spirit, to broaden our soul energy. I mean, that's what I believe, and so that's how I look at it. It's how I choose to look at it. Because the other way of looking at it is just so dark and ugly, and it
mhm,
doesn't benefit my higher self. So I look at it as that. Like I love talking to you about this stuff because it brightens my heart. It makes
mm,
me feel like this is all worth it, you
mhm.
know,
It is,
having these discussions.
absolutely. Well, I
Mhm.
think people can learn from it 'cause a lot of people haven't been exposed to what you've been exposed to. They
Well,
haven't
they have their own
experienced
versions of it. Yeah.
well, and that's what I was trying to correlate in some ways,
Mm.
might might not be as, like, the word I used earlier, colorful,
But it is,
but
like you getting hit on by very famous actors is very colorful to me. Like I've always been in these Forrest Gumpy situations where I meet these amazing people, but I'm always on the periphery going, nope, I don't deserve to be there. And so I like tap my foot in and then I watch things happen for other people.
Mhm,
But I've encountered so many uh, people that are way up on these levels, and but I've never done anything about it. And then I've seen you in your career, how you're in these pools of people that are so fascinating and accomplished, and you're one of them, and then these weird things still happen, you know, where
mhm,
it happens there in all the pools, you know? It's like when a lot of the famous actresses that were doing the Me Too movement, they were saying, and not just in acting world, like in all the jobs. They were making sure some of them were making sure to say this happens in all of these different occupations and
mhm,
workplaces and
mhm,
work dynamics or power dynamics, you know? And that's why, like, even in the BDSM world, to bring it back to that, like, people will be like, I want to wear a collar to collar myself, to own myself. I'm like, that's great. But let's not forget what it originally was. In the BDSM world, if someone had a collar on with a little loopy, it meant that they were in training with their dom. It was a prop used to symbolize that, and if you saw that person walking around the dungeon, they had a master or a dom already. They were off limits.
mm,
Then usually that person would hook the leash to it and walk them around as ownership, and now people are like you said, there's this maybe some of these movements have gotten a bit out of hand, like, I see it trickle into the BDSM world where the roles have been dissolved and the dom and the sub are kinda like, like, it was a very masculine or male dominated world, and
okay,
that's changing now. People are reinventing what words or dynamics are there, and I understand why. But I also think it's important to never forget what things mean in any community, you
mhm,
know?
right,
It's kind of like how I feel about when monuments get removed of the guys who were slave owners, you
mhm,
know? I get why people want those things moved because it invokes a horrible memory of something awful, and it was awful. But it doesn't change the fact that they still existed. I had a friend who was talking about some psychology, and I brought up Carl Jung, however you say his name, and she didn't wanna talk about him because she didn't wanna validate an older white man. And I said to her, "Yeah, but he's the reason you're a psychologist, because there's all these people before us, before our time, who
mhm,
did things that created the world we're in now."
mhm,
And I think it's important to never forget those people, whether they're good or bad, positive or negative. If we start erasing history, we won't remember it.
mhm,
It's really important to remember it, no matter what community we're talking about, you know?
yeah, I agree with that. I used to I think when I was going through, my getting to know me phase, there was a time that if something bothered me, let's say it was one of those statues, I would
Mhm.
just pretend that it wasn't there and I would pivot and find
Right.
the next best feeling thing.
Mhm.
But I'm in a space now that I just acknowledge that it's there and I I say, that's not where I live. And
Mhm.
somebody
Mhm.
else may need that to help them figure out where they're going next. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think that removing the statues is helping people, and that's good. But I think it's important for us to never forget what happened to people, and
Yeah.
however that needs to be. Um, I mean, it's in our history books, but books are going away. You know what I mean? And we're scrubbing the internet of things we do or don't want to remember. So that's kind of scary. Um,
And on top of
but
that,
mhm,
there I'm learning more and more that a lot of what they've been writing for decades, if not centuries, wasn't even true anyway.
right. Yeah, that's what I mean. We're grasping onto things that may not even have been the accurate history of it all, and that's something
Yeah.
to think about too. Like when AI is studying us years from now, will they be able to decipher what was actually true? You know,
Yeah.
what wasn't?
Yeah.
Even people talking about like some of our first presidents. How do they know that? How do we really know that? Except someone wrote
Yeah.
it down in their journal. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
I don't want people to read my journals assuming it's all true. A lot of it's fantasy. you know.
Oh, if people read my journals, they'd be like, "She's an idiot."
You know who I'm glad kept their journals is Pam Anderson. That made a cute little documentary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love her.
Mhm.
I
She's
really
great.
do.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you were in Europe and you came.
So I went to Europe for 3 years, and that was really good for me because it removed me from Brooke and Hedsey and everything that was comfortable, and so glad I did that because what I learned is that I'm actually really good at adapting myself into new communities, if there's a community there for me, right? So
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time in Europe, and then I also spent a lot of time in Colorado. During COVID, I was cleaning houses in Colorado. That was really humbling. And I couldn't create a community there because it was COVID.
Why did you go to Colorado?
Well, because it was during COVID when I came back from Europe when my breakup happened, and I didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I had my dog, and I had a friend that lived there who was willing to take me and the dog in. And
Okay.
since nothing was happening in the places I usually lived, like California, I thought, well, maybe this is something I need to be doing right now, just living in the mountains of Colorado. And then I found the house cleaning job, which was crazy. Talk about like killing your ego. Here I was like famous dominatrix and Hollywood singer, and now I'm cleaning toilets. It was really good for me, like really, really good for me. Um, and I did that for a year. And then I ended up moving to Vegas. So in Vegas has been great because it's it's a small town. If you're local, it's a small town. You get to know everybody pretty quickly if you make the effort. Plus, I already had some really great friends in town that were working musicians.
Mhm.
So went to some of his shows, sat in with him, and everybody's like, "Oh, you can sing. Who are you?" So that really worked out. And this is a great place for me right now because I followed my mother and sister here. So for the first time since the '80s, I'm living with my mother and sister.
That's
And
really
that's
fun.
it's amazing. It gives me the chance to do things right that I didn't do when I was a kid. So I'll share one little thing I like to do is my mom could never get my sister and I out of bed when we were kids. And now my sister and I are the first ones out of bed and my mom's asleep. So it's really cute, like a flip. But I always make me and my sister a latte and then I bring it to my sister in her room because I always feel like I was kind of a crappy big sister when we were kids. So now I'm getting the chance to be a good big sister,
Well, that's
and
nice.
also a better daughter. My mom is getting up there. My mom's like 88 going on 38. So she's pretty awesome, but it's good to be with her at this time in her life, and
Mhm.
I get to sing, and I still do
Right.
coaching online and teaching yoga, and practicing Buddhism and just doing all these things that make me feel good while I'm dating myself.
Mhm.
Like it's a good life here. And I don't know. I eventually will probably go back to Europe, but right now Vegas is home. It feels right. And the Wilkes women are together hanging out. It's great.
Well, it sounds wonderful.
Yeah. I'm so glad we did this. This has like really
I
been
know.
fun and kind of cathartic. And, I really appreciate you. And I love that you're doing this show. I love
Well,
it.
I'm
It's
I'm
great.
just glad that you came here to share today, and I'm glad that you prefaced it with me not being judgmental because I didn't wanna come across as that
You're
in
not.
anything that I asked or said. I just love your story. I love you,
I
and
love
I'm
you.
grateful that we're friends.
Me too. It's been a long friendship, and here's to
So,
many more years. Keep doing this. This is really great. I can't wait to see all the people you have on.
okay. Well, we'll get some of your links up, and you mentioned that you have a memoir coming out.
Yes. My memoir is called Sing, Spank, Scrub. It's kind of a play on Eat, Pray, Love, that kind of thing. So it's the three chapters
Yes.
basically. So singing and then spanking, obviously, and then the scrub is more about how the house cleaning led to yoga and spirituality and sobriety. I'm sober in all things, mainly love addiction, which we talked a lot about today. So that's the memoir, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Well, thank you, Brooke. Everybody check her out, Brooke Wilkes. Uh, we're glad that you were here with us today on the Proxy Principle,
Thank you, my
and
friend.
hopefully we'll see you.
Love you.
Maybe get to talk to you a little bit after your book comes out.
Thank you, honey. I'd love that.
Love you. Take care.
Love you.